Heavy ETF outflows continued yesterday, but the price of Bitcoin went up as much as 10%. What gives? We dive deep into how the Bitcoin market actually works under the hood, and we answer your burning question: will there be no Bitcoin left on exchanges after the halving? Plus, when Bitcoin's price inevitably goes to the moon, do you have plans in place in order to pass it along to your loved ones? We look at a real-world example to show you exactly why inheritance planning is so important. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bitcoin Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. Yesterday, we saw BlackRock and Fidelity have their second lowest day of inflows ever, with just 49 million and 13 million respectively. GBTC outflows continue to be heavy. Yesterday, they had over 390 million in outflows alone. Overall, they've lost 45% of the Bitcoin that they've held in their trust since it launched in January 11th this year. This is the third day in a row of net outflows. Selling pressure continues to be heavy. But Dante, wait, if the ETFs had low volume yesterday and there was a lot of selling, then why did Bitcoin's price go up almost 10%? Doesn't selling equate to lower prices and buying equate to higher prices? No, not necessarily. I get questions like this all the time in our daily@swanbitcoin.com email address, where I personally answer your questions about Bitcoin and help you along your Bitcoin journey. Dante, if the ETFs keep buying, will the price of Bitcoin continue to go up? Will there be no Bitcoin left on exchanges after the halving? Before I jump in here, you guys should hear this explanation from my quant, John Har.
That's my Swan.
What?
My Swan. My Bitcoin.
Specialist, look at him. You notice anything different about him?
Look at his cufflinks.
Look at his face.
Look at his LinkedIn.
Look at his eyes. Give you a hint.
He worked at Goldman. Fixed income specialist. Rode the same elevator as David Solomon.
Yeah, I'm sure of the math.
Hi, I'm John Har. Jared likes to emphasize my Wall Street credentials because he thinks it's more impressive. I never met David Solomon. It was Lloyd Blankfein.
That was a funny video I made about John just to give him a hard time. But seriously, John knows what he's talking about. He spent 12 years working at Goldman Sachs and Wall Street, and he knows a thing or two about OTC desks, having sold institutional bonds for years. This entire interview on the Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast is phenomenal. But hear what John has to say about OTC desks specifically.
Markets would be very slow. They would grind to a halt if every time someone came to you with an order to buy, that you had to go find a seller for that exact amount and get them to agree on price. And so the reality is
just a quick question.
Yeah,
I don't want to divert us too much into the weeds here, but that's also where options markets come in, right? So let's say you're holding 10,000 Bitcoin and you can't really take the price risk. You could take the other side in the options market with it's basically an insurance policy to protect your ass in case it goes down 30% overnight or something.
Yep. And that's why this is a full-time job. Like being an OTC desk is managing your exposure, whether it's, you're getting close to matching up buyers and sellers and you're high degree of confidence that this guy on the top of my list is going to want to buy this Bitcoin I just bought from this other person at approximately this price because he gave me indicative orders of where he's looking to trade. That's one way you would manage your exposure. Or maybe you just, using options and derivatives, you say, okay, now I'm hedged and I don't really care who the next buyer is because I've hedged my exposure. So it's a very complicated thing, but that's what brokers and OTC desks are doing. And then just one comment I would make about the fact that there was this narrative kind of going around OTC desks are running out of Bitcoin. The TLDR view that I have there is that I don't think there's a ton of signal in that type of a statement.
Whoa, John. Don't steal my thunder. Let me give this explanation to our viewers. So how do you buy Bitcoin on exchanges like swan.com or Cash App? Well, there's an OTC desk or a market maker behind the scenes helping to buy and sell Bitcoin on behalf of two parties. Most exchanges and miners work directly through OTC desks because the prospect of having to individually sell a block of Bitcoin to an individual buyer every time, like John said, would take the market to a screeching halt and no trading would ever happen. So an OTC desk's role is to facilitate transactions between buyers and sellers. There's a person that is willing to buy Bitcoin at a certain price, and there's a person that is willing to sell Bitcoin at a certain price. But it's not the buying and selling itself that actually drives the price of Bitcoin. It's the difference between how many people want to buy Bitcoin and at what price people are willing to sell for. The Bitcoin market is probably one of the most liquid markets in the world because it's a global asset that is constantly trading and settling 24/7, 365, meaning that there's always buyers and sellers. Here's an example of a buyer on one side of the world who may be willing to pay a premium relative to what the cost of Bitcoin is right now, which may cause the price to go up. India's Congress Party, which represents 20% of the entire population in India, had all of their bank accounts frozen in an attack on their election campaign.
If any of you imagine, anybody in the country imagines what happens when your bank account, your ATM card, your entire financial identity is erased, right? You can imagine if it is done to a family, the family will starve to death. If it is done to a business, the business will be crippled, right? This is what has been done to the Congress Party 1 month back.
So, as an example, if all of your assets are frozen and you're trying to win an election in 2 months, the price of Bitcoin currently is $63,000. But would you be willing to pay a premium of $65,000, $66,000, or $69,000 per Bitcoin in USD terms in order to have access to funds to run your political campaign? Well, the overwhelming answer is yes. One final comment about the ETFs. It's not the amount of Bitcoin that people are buying or selling through ETFs that causes the price to go up or down. It does, however, set a relative floor, because one thing that we've continued to look at through the data is that long-term Bitcoin holders, right now it's 68% of the network that has not sold Bitcoin in over a year. For this set of people, there's not a good fiat price that they would be willing to sell their Bitcoin for. So in order for this group of people to sell their Bitcoin, they would need a much higher price. Try infinity. Let me share this one thing since we are less than 30 days away from the Bitcoin halving. This might be mind-blowing for some people, but all 21 million Bitcoin are already created. It's just the issuance rate of that Bitcoin that is referred to when people talk about there only being 900 new Bitcoin mined or created every single day. They're not actually created. They're just being issued as a reward for creating new blocks. After the halving, that number gets cut in half to 450 Bitcoin per day, or 3 1/8 per block reward. So the global amount of Bitcoin out there is roughly 19.7 million. So back to our OTC desk example. When people say that there is no Bitcoin, there's potentially 19.7 million Bitcoin that's able to be traded at any given moment or time. But for all of us here, because we're all becoming DCAers, stackers, long-term humble hodlers, that price needs to go up a lot more. And according to Nick Bhatia, he thinks that it will do just that 100K is just the beginning.
So when it goes from 70 to 15, I write to my readers, yep, like this is what we expect from an immature asset class. And all of a sudden, the maturity turns on, and you look at the market. So now you look at the demand, you look at the daily ETF inflows, and you just understand this is money that's going to stick around. It's driving the realized price up, which is basically just this. When the coins move on chain into those vaults, it's being struck at 60, 70 grand now. That is a cost basis of 60, 70 grand. Those people are in it for the 10 bagger. That is just starting now. It's not a misestimation of the supply or the demand. It's the new dynamics of the demand that changes the game for Bitcoin. So I'm not saying we won't get another 80% cycle, but it might be from a level that's much higher than past cycles. I don't know. I don't want to project, the price up and down. My comfort in starting to verbalize 100K. I got really comfortable late last year. The court case was passed. I wrote, it's time to prepare for six-figure Bitcoin. I started writing about it. I want the readers to understand it's time to prepare yourself. We're going to 100K. It's happening. Now you can actually start, right? Because I want to be not fantastical in my analysis. So I'm not talking about $1 million Bitcoin all the time, because I'm doing real day-to-day analysis of global macro and Bitcoin. Now, part of the day-to-day analysis is, man, it can go really high now.
Again, on this show, we're here to educate. We're not here to give price predictions. But I do want to consider the heavy reality on the other side of 100K, 200K, 500K Bitcoin. Are you considering the reality that one day you will die and the Bitcoin that you've been stacking and holding for so long is going to be passed down to one of your loved ones? Have you considered all of the implications around that? You know that I like to highlight a good sports story here in the Bitcoin Daily Show, and this one absolutely broke my heart.
You can't be mad at the parents on this one. You can't be mad at the parents on this one. You can't be mad at I'm sorry. You got to understand. They broke. They ain't got no money. No, they don't got no money. You can't be bad because he's selling the rings. He got no money. The money wasn't left to them. They trying to eat.
In an incredibly sad story, Kobe Bryant's parents listed his championship rings for auction. I'm not assuming to know all the particulars of Kobe's parents and their particular situation, but this does raise a few questions for me that we should think about as Bitcoiners and people who are thinking about inheritance planning and passing our Bitcoin down to our loved ones. Are you thinking not only about leaving your Bitcoin to your family, but also educating them on the value of what they hold relative to fiat? Because examples like this shine a light on, in a pinch or in a time of desperation or need, they may be willing to sell a much more valuable asset like Bitcoin for a much lesser asset like fiat currency. If your loved ones do understand what they own, do they know how to take care of and maintain what you've given them? Do they understand seed phrases and backups and passphrases? Do they understand the difference between hot wallets and cold wallets? Are they listed as beneficiaries? Do you have executors? What's the difference between simply having a will and a living trust? How do you onboard these types of entities onto platforms like Swan.com or other Bitcoin-only platforms? Do they have power of attorney? Talking through these things are difficult. If you have a substantial amount of your net worth in Bitcoin, I want to help you. If you're nervous about these sorts of things, please do send an email to daily@swanbitcoin.com. And I personally will help you, or I will refer you to someone on the Swan private team. These people deal with these kinds of conversations in one-on-one situations with clients every single day. And the number one thing that most people struggle with inheritance planning isn't technical. It isn't about keys and passwords. It's educating everybody who will be responsible for your Bitcoin on how to take care of it. And our team is there to help you every step along the way. And since we're talking about your future, I want to let you guys in on an exciting opportunity to connect with somebody who's helped to manage money for 40 years and is an absolute legend in the Bitcoin world, Larry Lepard. Larry is someone who I look up to personally because he actually is an inspiration on how to live a great life, not only just with money, but with marriage and his health. Larry is a wealth of wisdom, so don't miss this live free webinar that we're doing with Larry Lepard next Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to talk about ways that you can hedge against debasement and inflation with Bitcoin in a portfolio. The link will be in the show notes, and again, you're not going to want to miss it. And with that, we're signing off for the day. I'm Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.